win and our economic challenges will disappear. If ZAC is to deal with every matter reported, then our prisons should be expanded in order to accommodate the culprits. Whilst other countries are closing their prisons for lack of clients, Zimbabwe prisons will be open for business. It is in this vein that our modus operandi as ZAC, together with all Zimbabweans, is to leave no stone unturned to ensure that everybody who is engaging in corrupt activities is brought to book. ZAC has therefore come up with the following steps in fighting the scourge in support of His Excellency's stance on zero tolerance to corruption. ZAC will engage Zimbabwe Republic Police to reach an understanding on matters that can be handled by the police and those that will be handled by ZAC. Our strategy is to have ZAC dealing with cases involving high-level corruption and cases involving high-profile members of society. Let me advise the nation that since my appointment, ZAC has received 38 cases of corruption, of which 10 are high-profile in nature. ZAC has already started thoroughly investigating these high-profile corruption cases. One has been referred to the National Prosecution Authority this morning for trial. I am, however, concerned that during these investigations, ZAC officers met resistance from some individuals in offices of high authority. However, I wish to assure the public that those who have attempted to defeat the course of justice have been dealt with and have subsequently released the documentary evidence needed for investigations. Let everyone be warned that ZAC will not hesitate to do all in its powers to ensure that every case is investigated diligently without fear or favor. ZAC will in future prefer charges of obstructing the course of justice to anyone interfering with investigations, so be warned. As you are aware, corruption is a global phenomenon that requires globalized solutions due to the globalized nature of its activities and the networks of the criminals. I noted that ZAC led an investigation crack team that is sophisticated, well-paid, and technically sound to conduct thorough investigations, asset tracking, and asset recovery, thus building a strong asset recovery component in the fight against corruption. It is in that regard that ZAC is partnering national, regional, and international bodies to have our officers trained. I'm happy to report that such training has already begun. ZAC will soon be presenting remuneration proposals for its officers, which is in line with best practices, for instance, Botswana, Zambia, Mauritius, and Tanzania's anti-corruption agencies. This will ensure that the officers will not be susceptible to corruption. In-house, ZAC has put mechanisms of vetting dockets before referral to the National Prosecuting Authority. Be assured that we now have mechanisms in place to ensure quality investigations. As ZAC, we are aiming at 99% convictions for all matters taken to court. When I assumed office, no asset recoveries were taking place. I am happy to announce that ZAC has commenced parallel investigations in all its cases. That is, we are pursuing criminal investigations as well as investigations that will lead to civil forfeiture. No one is going to continue to benefit from ill-gotten wealth. It should be known and appreciated within our nation that crime does not pay. In that regard, I call on the powers that be to fast-track the money laundering and proceeds of crime amendment bill and enforcing unexplained wealth orders. The Commission wishes to highlight that some proceeds of crime have been diverted to churches in the name of tithing. We call upon church leaders to support the anti-corruption drive by scrutinizing the source of donations they receive from their congregants. ZAC wishes to reassure the members of the public that whistleblowers will be protected. The Commission has forwarded to the Attorney General its recommendations for a comprehensive whistleblower framework, which is in line with the requirements of the provisions of the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption and other best practices. ZAC is in the process of activating all its toll-free lines, which will be manned by dedicated officers. Prevention is better than cure, as the saying goes. As ZAC, we have the mandate to assess systems for both private and public institutions to plug loopholes for corruption. ZAC has conducted 6 system reviews involving 5 central hospitals and the Zimbabwe Schools Examination Council. The Commission has also conducted 2 compliance spot checks on the management of Cyclone Idai resources in Chimanimani and at the National Blood Services Zimbabwe. In all cases, the findings are of great concern to ZAC, and we implore the institution concerned to institute the corruption preventative measures recommended. It is our wish as ZAC that legislation amendments be made to the Anti-Corruption Commission Act to provide sanctions for non-compliance. We shall advocate for the strengthening of institutions with oversight roles in the fight against corruption, like the ZRP, NPA, Judicial Services Commission, Financial Intelligence Unit, Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, amongst others, by way of enhancing skills. The above institutions should also be fully resourced and capacitated in order to effectively carry out their functions. As ZAC, we have also noted that ministries that have an oversight role on state enterprises and parastatals are a cause for concern. Equally, companies run by majority shareholders of family business are of a serious concern in terms of their adherence to corporate governance principles. The government needs to urgently review the powers of ministries over state enterprises and parastatals under their purview to stem out this culture of looting in these state enterprises and parastatals by parent ministries. We also acknowledge receiving the recent report of the Auditor General of Zimbabwe tabled in Parliament. The contents of the report give rise to a very reasonable suspicion of incidences of either corruption, theft, misappropriation, abuse of power, and or other improper conduct in the public sector. In the circumstances and on the basis of the report of the Auditor General of Zimbabwe, ZAC has opened active investigations in respect of all ministries, government departments, state enterprises, and parastatals implicated in the report, with a view to bringing to book all those implicated in any and all acts of corruption, theft, misappropriation, abuse of power, and other improper conduct. From the same report, I noted with concern that ZAC did not submit its financial statements for 2018. I've been advised that ZAC has been behind in its submissions of financial statements due to incapacitation. ZAC submitted reports from 2012 to 2017 in June 2018, of which the Auditor General's office assisted with. We are in the process of finalizing the 2018 financial statements. I assure the nation that going forward, the Commission's financial statements will be submitted timelessly. We have also taken note of the trending list of alleged corrupt top government and ZANU-PF officials by the ZANU-PF Youth League. Without condoning the method used by the Youth League, we are summoning the Youth League to bring evidence of corruption against those implicated with a view to prosecuting such corruption. Whilst ZAC is happy to announce that it now has powers of arrest, it, however, refers all completed investigations for prosecution to the National Prosecuting Authority. Once ZAC has investigated the matters and referred them to the National Prosecuting Authority for prosecution, that is the end of ZAC functions. ZAC will, however, take an interest in how the National Prosecuting Authority prosecute its matters, and shall be sitting in court for all ZAC cases to observe proceedings in court. We recognize that in order for ZAC to achieve its mandate, it requires a strong communications culture. ZAC will therefore embark on a cocktail of communication strategies, including always being available to brief the public through the media on the status of our operations. In conclusion, I wish to advise the media that the ZAC interim spokesperson shall be Mr. Silence Pondo, Secretary to the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. He will be conducting future monthly briefings with the members of the press. I'm personally available on Twitter as Lois Matanda-Moyo. The ZAC official Twitter handle is @ZACOnline, and the official Facebook page is facebook.com/ZACOnline. ZAC will communicate through these. Let's all resist and report corruption. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take a few questions from the press.
Yes.
My name is Robert.
You are from?
From Zambia. The previous commission was also accused of corruption from some of the whistleblowers who brought in evidence. But according to them, surprisingly, the culprits were cleared by that commission. Are you going to revisit those cases?
Thank you for that question. It all depends on whether those persons are going to re-report the matters. Because once you report a matter and it's not investigated and prosecuted, it means that is still alive. So if those persons are still interested in bringing those, they can still bring them on and we'll take them up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Blessed Mhlanga. I'm with Heart and Soul TV. I just want to find from the Honorable Justice that up to now you appear to be a one-man team because the other commissioners have not been appointed, but you've been making far-reaching decisions. Which quorum are you using, or which part of instrument allows you, for instance, the reinstatement of all the officers of ZAC and a number of decisions that have been made by a one-man commission?
Thank you for your question. On the issue of reinstatement was done by the former commission. All I did was to announce in the press because our members were getting a raw deal from members of the public who still thought that they were on suspension. But when I was appointed, I got here and those persons had already been reinstated. So whatever I'm doing is just continuation of the work on the ground. Other decisions will be made once the commissioners are in place.
Yes, madam.
My name is Lucy Yasini. I'm a freelance journalist. During your presentation, you said the economic challenges that the country is facing are due to corruption. But the narrative over the years has been that it's all about sanctions. Why this change of narrative now that you are acknowledging that corruption is playing a role in the economic meltdown in the country?
Deal with corruption. And in analyzing the situation, I have noted that the economic challenges, they are mainly caused by corruption as far as my mandate is concerned. I'm not dealing with sanctions because that is not my portfolio. So that's why I'm saying corruption is causing these economic challenges that we are facing today.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ryan Komo from ZFL. Justice, you mentioned that you have now arresting powers. I just want to find out, are you an independent commission or you are now part of the executive? Or are you implying that police are failing to arrest?
Thank you for that question. We are still an independent commission, but an independent commission with powers of investigations. Once a person is investigating and you don't have arresting powers, that is a difficult thing to do. Because as you know, the culprits may run away before they are arrested. So it is very important that what ZAC is investigating, ZAC be bestowed with such arresting powers so that matters are dealt with efficiently and effectively. That is why ZAC has got arresting powers, and that does not make ZAC as part of the executive. It remains ZAC an independent commission.
Is it from the constitution of, you derive that power from the constitution or from a statute?
We derive that power from the statute, and as SI was presented soon and gazetted on Friday, giving ZAC those powers.
Do you think this constitutional?
Yes, it is. If you believe it's not, you can always challenge that.
Okay.
You've got that right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Perfect Lomwani from AB Communications, ZFM. The powers that you have been given as a commission to effect arrest, there are fears that this will be used for political fights, as the commission will also be used to address or deal with political enemies. How do you respond to that question? What assurances are you giving to the nation that we're not going to see this commission delving into political fights and dealing with political enemies?
Thank you for that question. ZAC is an independent commission, apolitical in nature, and it will never be political. ZAC will not be used in any political fights. I guess that's why the president has appointed a judge as a chairperson of ZAC. That is to ensure that we distinguish between crime and politicking. So once any report is made which is of a political nature, we will screen it from here and no one will be arrested on politicking. We will simply concentrate on crime and corruption and abuse of power.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Leo Munende from newzimbabwe.com. My question is, now that you have arresting powers and in the context of previous years, why is it, you are saying that corruption is the major reason why Zimbabwe is failing as a country? Why is it we haven't had any major arrests as a result of your investigations in the past years? If it is really a problem, what challenges are we facing?
Well, I cannot answer for the previous commission. As you are aware, I've just been appointed. And I've assumed duties last week as I was still finishing my parties in the courts. So I cannot answer for the past corruption commission. But I want to assure the nation that during my tenure of office, we are going to deal with corruption without any fear of favor. And as you have heard, we've already sent one case to court.
Yes, madam.
My name is Anna Chibam from newzimbabwe.com. I want to ask, you're not going to be prosecuting, you won't be the judge in court, but maybe your opinion from those who have got wealth that they got through, short deals. Are we going to see those people having the wealth being taken to go back to the states?
Yes, that is what I assured the nation. Asset recovery will be a big thing during my tenure of office. We don't want anybody to benefit from crime. People have been benefiting from crime. And there is no fight against corruption without asset recovery. And therefore, I'm going to make asset recovery a big issue.
Yes, sir.
Justice, do you care to share with us the case that has been taken to court, as in who or what organization?
It's the Zinara case, Simon Taranike, but now that it's a public document, you can go to court and peruse the docket. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Previously, we were getting tips that some of the people were alleged, sorry, my name is John Kasim, SABC channel officer. Some of the culprits who were on the corruption list being investigated had already taken their wealth into offshore accounts. For instance, the Madagascar case, where everyone knows that Zimbabweans were putting money there. Nothing was done to trace that money and maybe have it recovered back to Zimbabwe. Are you also seized with that issue?
Let me refer to my colleague, Mr. Goga. Are you aware of that?
Maybe can you repeat your question?
It is known that most of the culprits previously who were known to be corrupt and alleged to be corrupt, arrested and so forth, but later discharged because there was purportedly lack of evidence, whereas the same people were known to have diverted their proceeds into offshore accounts. Talking of Madagascar is one of the countries. It is known. And previously we saw there was no attempt even to go to Madagascar, even to get that money taken back to Zimbabwe. Unlike other countries where we see anti-corruption commissions doing all that, going all out to make sure that there's a recovery. Are you going to be seized with that as the new commission? Because the issue, they were complaining of boundaries and so forth, laws to do with boundaries.
Okay, let me just answer it perhaps in a general fashion. We as ZAC, we are going to engage international partners and we are going to engage with those countries where our monies will be. We'll find out whether Zimbabwe has got any agreements with those countries. If not, we as ZAC will go in and then have agreements with those countries in order to repatriate those funds. Otherwise, we are going to track funds beyond the boundaries of Zimbabwe and recover beyond those boundaries.
Okay.
Honorable Justice, you in your statement you said that you are asking the members of ZANU-PF Youth League to bring the evidence and cases against the people that they are alleged to be corrupt. Is it not typical of a police officer asking a victim of assault to come and bring the perpetrator? Is it not that the red flags have been raised and ZAC now should be seized with the investigation of the matters? Because most of the issues that were referred to by the ZANU-PF Youth League are issues that are to do with reports that are already in Parliament, allegations that have already been made in public in other quarters, including Parliament, and nothing has been done.
We thought that the Youth League has other information. As I have already alluded to, we are seized with the matters arising from the Auditor General's report. Already we've opened investigations pertaining to those matters. So if those individuals listed are part of the report, then we are seized with the matters. But if there are others who are not part of the report, we are calling upon those Youth League to bring the evidence and to report to ZAC, since it is ZAC which is mandated to deal with corruption. Corruption should not be dealt with at a public press conference, but people should actually fight corruption effectively by reporting corruption and bringing the evidence to ZAC so that the perpetrators are dealt with. That's exactly what I'm saying.
And the move to appoint a commission of inquiry into those allegations, doesn't it overstep the bounds of ZAC?
That's why I'm calling upon them to bring the evidence to ZAC, because it's not necessary to appoint a commission of inquiry when ZAC is in place. ZAC is here, it is mandated to deal with issues of corruption. So they must come and report to ZAC.
So the president would be wrong in appointing that commission because he's the one who said he will appoint that commission.
Perhaps that's a party issue. If they want to appoint as a party, well, that's it. But if they want to deal with corruption, then this is the right forum.
I think we are done. Okay, last one.
Right, my name is Theophilus Chuma. There are issues that were centered around NASA, and we understand there is a forensic reports that was submitted to the ministry, but it has not yet found its way to Parliament. How are you going to be proceeding with the NASA craft issue?
Yes, we're already seized with the NASA issue. We're investigating NASA issue. And I'm happy to report that we do have the forensic report as ZAC, and we are going through the forensic report, and arrests will be made arising from that report.
Is that a certainty?
Yes, it is a certainty. Just watch this space.
So, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, I would like to thank you so much for your constructive, questions and comments. Justice, I would like to thank you so much, and everyone else.
Thank you very much.
Our friend, do you have anything to say?
No, I think the press has done with in regards